Welcome everyone to Ratioed. My name is Harrison Faulkner. Well, another week in the books and another stacked lineup of content to get into this week on the show. We start off with Pierre Poilievre, who exploded Liberal heads this week after releasing his latest campaign video. Then we move on to a viral clip of a Nigerian official who might have just given Liberal cabinet ministers a new strategy at committee meetings. Then we move on to a very brave NDP MP who gave her staff, and most importantly herself, the day off on Monday in solidarity with American people who are pregnant. And finally, as always, we wrap up the show this week with the Ratio of the Week award, and it's going to Canada's Commander-in-Cringe, Mr. Jagmeet Singh. Before we get into it, I just quickly want to say thank you to all of you for your support of the show over the last few weeks. I really appreciate it, and I know that True North does as well. Now, because the left is constantly giving us ammunition for the show and constantly giving us great content to laugh at, to mock, and make fun of, we lose a lot of it by Thursday as the news cycle turns over. So if you want to see Ratioed more than once a week, if you want to see Ratioed twice a week, make sure to like this video. Like this video to send a message to the True North bosses that you want to see more of Ratioed. All right, thanks again, guys, and let's get into it. Well, folks, he did it again. Pierre Poilievre sent the left into a total frenzy this week over his latest campaign video. Now, if you've been on social media over the past few days, you've likely seen it. In the video, Poilievre talks about barnboard and how it passes through different hands, serves different purposes, and it grows more beautiful over time, and it takes on a story of its own. He uses the barnboard theme as an allegory for one of his key campaign themes, which is reclaiming Canada, reclaiming our freedoms as a country, and reclaiming what was already ours. So, of course, as you can imagine, the left loses their minds over this video. They totally lose it. They freak out. Now, you'd have a pretty tough job trying to convince me that that's not one of the goals of the Poilievre campaign when they put out videos like this, that they're not trying to work up the left, to get them talking about Pierre, to get them talking about the campaign. Of course they are. And it just works every single time. The left falls for it every single time. This video has over 700,000 views. There's not a candidate in the race that can come close to that. So, of course, that's one of the strategies. The left, of course, doesn't see that. They just get worked up. And that's just how it goes every single time. They always fall for it. Now, before we get into some of the reactions, let's watch some of the best parts of this video.
And what I'm doing, and what all of us do when we bring these boards into our house, is we are reclaiming something that was already there.
And just at that moment, you can hear the explosions.
And that's what my campaign is about. It's not about inventing some brand new utopia out of scratch. It's about reclaiming the freedom that is our natural right. They can tear down all our statues and ban all kinds of words and books. Then they can make us forget how we got here and take us to a place we've never been. A utopia, ironically, is a Greek word for no place.
So there you have it, guys. A very well-crafted, well-done video, a message from Pierre Poilievre's campaign, which clearly articulates a central theme of his campaign. Nothing freaks the left out more than to see a conservative winning on social media, and that's frankly what Pierre Poilievre's campaign is doing right now. You see, for the left, social media used to be their space. That's where they used to dominate. And they don't want to see conservatives winning on social media. That's what really gets to them. That's what freaks them out the most. What you saw there was a well-crafted campaign video. What the left saw was white nationalist dog whistle politics. That's right. Let's just look at some of these hilarious reactions to this video. This person writes, no matter how you slice it, this video is filled with the same dog whistles that Erin O'Toole's Take Back Canada had. And if you don't think so, you're exactly the person Pierre is whistling. So yes, this person thinks that Pierre Poilievre is trying to employ the same strategy as Erin O'Toole because that worked out so well the last time, didn't it? Here's another great quote tweet from a very triggered leftist. This is nothing more than thinly veiled white supremacist messaging that reifies old stock and purist narratives. Yes, of course, because using barnboard as an allegory for one of your key campaign messages is of course white nationalist. If you talk about anything that has to do with Canada before Justin Trudeau, then you must be hearkening back to the days of white nationalist Canada. Come on. This kind of rhetoric promotes hate and racism. That his numbers are growing tells us a lot about the rise of replacement anxiety in Canada, and it's disgusting. So this seems to be the new strategy, guys, for the left. If you are a popular conservative and you are winning over support of voters from across the country, traditional voting blocs of Liberals or the NDP, working class Canadians, then you mustn't be a good politician. You mustn't have good messaging. What you must be is a white nationalist. What you must be is a racist who's using dog whistle politics. That is the new strategy of the left. Whenever they're confronted with someone who's experiencing real success in this country, political success, that's their first go-to. That's probably their only go-to as well, that you must be a white nationalist. And of course, we have this great quote to wrap it all up for us coming from a UFT med school faculty member, of course. He writes, "What's missed in this at Pierre Poilievre metaphor of using wood in a barn to talk about reclaiming what was already there is that this wood isn't a right bestowed on him. It's stolen from Indigenous people through violence. Say that part." Oh my God, yes, of course. How could Pierre have forgotten? The wood is stolen from the Indigenous people. The barn board is stolen from the Indigenous people through violence. Because as we all know, every single tree in Canada is a property of the Indigenous people. How could Pierre Poilievre be so short-sighted? Alright, so moving on, I found a video posted this week to Twitter by an account called Africa in Focus. And this video has over 20 million views. It has over 30,000 quote tweets. So clearly, it struck a chord with people around the world. And basically what's going on here is a Nigerian government official was hauled in front of a Nigerian government committee, a Nigerian Emergencies Act committee, if you will, and he's being grilled for corruption allegations. And when the going gets pretty tough, when he starts to feel a lot of heat, instead of answering the questions, he just fake faints. He pretends to faint at the table and collapse. And while I was watching this, I thought to myself, hey, wait a minute, that's a perfect strategy for the Liberal cabinet. For Chrystia Freeland, for Bill Blair, for Marco Mendicino and David Lametti, in front of the Emergencies Act committee, instead of answering questions about whether or not the government had any real request from the police, instead of asking questions about who requested the government to invoke the Emergencies Act, just give up at the table. Just pretend to faint at the table. That's a perfect strategy. I'm sure that'll get the press and the Conservatives off their tails. So just watch this hilarious video.
Are you aware that every expenditure you make from 31st May till date are not...
His eyes are open there. You can see he's waiting for like, oh, are you going to stop asking me this question now? This is a really uncomfortable question. Almost like if the government relied on a CBC article to invoke the Emergencies Act, or if the RCMP or any other law enforcement asked the government to invoke the Emergencies Act. Kind of like that.
Are not...
Sanka, you dead? Yeah, man.
You can hear some people in the background laughing, which is hilarious. And then they start to do some very weird CPR there. And then you can see he puts his hands up. You're like, okay, I'm done. It's obvious I'm just acting. So of course, if this were to be put into play, this is what that might look like in Canada.
Just answer the question, Minister Freeland. Were you aware, yes or no? It's a simple question.
Every expenditure you make.
The most senior cabinet minister is not prepared to accept whether or not the CBC retracted a false story?
Are not...
You, as the most senior cabinet minister and the deputy prime minister, relied upon that initial story from the CBC and shared your concerns with Canadians regarding terrorism funding and money laundering. Your words, correct? Your words several times in the House referred to terrorism funding and money laundering. Are you saying you didn't use those words?
I'm speaking here today.
So the comments on this video are hilarious, and most of it is around the world, people talking about their government leaders using this strategy to avoid scrutiny, and it just works for Canada's situation perfectly. But a former UK cabinet minister in Boris Johnson's government, a former defense minister in the UK, Johnny Mercer, he wrote, "Brilliant, often thought about doing this when asked a tricky question. Never actually done it. Yet." Which is just so perfect, because at least he can admit it. At least he would admit that, maybe if the going gets pretty tough, if the questions get a little too hot, maybe you just break out this strategy. It seems to be pretty effective. Can't you just see Marco Mendicino doing this in a committee meeting? I mean, it'll happen. Just give it time. All right, everyone, moving on. We now turn our focus to the NDP, and they really make it easy for us on this show. They are always giving us stuff to laugh at. This week, of course, is no different. We start with MP Rachel Blaney, a BC MP. She's actually the chief whip of the NDP. So this woman is basically in charge of motivating the NDP to vote in favor of every single Liberal bill. that gets put in front of them. Anyway, Rachel Blaney over the weekend, as the weekend began to wind to a close, as the realization of having to go back to work on Monday became more a reality, Rachel Blaney came up with a brilliant idea. A way to give herself, most importantly, and her staff an extra day of vacation. What she was going to do was close down her offices in solidarity with the United States, in solidarity with, as she writes, pregnant people who are pregnant. So a Canadian MP was going to shut down her office on Monday, July 4th, in solidarity with American people who are pregnant. In the tweet, she writes, I have instructed my staff to close offices on July 4th in solidarity with women in the USA and the world in support of reproductive freedoms and in protest of the lack of access to abortion services. So a Canadian MP is shutting down her office in support of the lack of worldwide access to abortions and in the United States. What a brilliant excuse to get an extra day off. Healthcare must include the right to choose. People who are pregnant need to be safe. So weird. She says women at the beginning, and then instead of putting women at the end, she writes people who are pregnant. So which is it, Rachel? Is it women or is it people who are pregnant because of those men that we know get pregnant as well? We wouldn't want them to lose access to abortion services as well, right? That'd be terrible. Now, after seeing this tweet, reading it, and getting my laughter out and having time to internalize it, I came to a realization, everyone. I came to a realization as to how the NDP actually keeps staff on their team. Because I can imagine it's probably a pretty depressing place to be these days. Not a lot of people showing them love. Not a lot of people showing them support. I mean, they're getting heckled out of their own towns like their leader is. It's because they have bosses like Rachel Blaney sticking up for her workers, finding new ways, working hard to find new ways to give them extra weekends, to give them extra time off. That is what standing up for workers really looks like, eh? Now, if only I could join Rachel's staff and get Monday off as well, I would have been right there with you guys, protesting for U.S. abortion rights in Canada. Great stuff. It's so perfect because she wrote the tweet on Sunday, the day before her and her staff were supposed to go back to work. So she just decided, you know what, this weekend is really nice. I kind of want to kick it for another day. Let's take Monday off. And let's use American abortion access as a reason to do it. I mean, that's pretty creative, don't you think? Now, this tweet got brutally ratioed on Twitter, and it was a close contender for the award this week. I gotta tell you, it was very close. Rachel Blaney got 1,000 comments to her 150 likes. Pretty tough ratio there, I gotta say. And some of these comments are hilarious. Trudeau's Sue-Ann Levy, who's always great on Twitter, commented, "Good excuse to take more time off. You must think we're stupid." This person comes in and goes, "Oh, I see. You want a 4-day weekend. Just say that then." And this person comments, "And their salaries for the day are going to which charity?" So perfect. Yes, the taxpayer-funded salary of Rachel Blaney and the taxpayer-funded salary of her staff, they wanted to take that time to protest American abortion access, not to work for Canadians, not to serve Rachel's constituency, of course. American abortion issues are far more important than the day-to-day issues of Rachel Blaney's constituents. Anyway, Rachel, lucky for you, if it wasn't for the stupidity of your boss, Jagmeet Singh, you would be taking home the Ratio of the Week award. But no, as we said at the beginning, this week it goes to Canada's Commander in Cringe, Jagmeet Singh. On July 4th, the day that Rachel Blaney and her staff took the day to protest American abortion rights, Jagmeet Singh walked into an extremely bad ratio, a ratio worthy of great recognition, which is what he receives on the show this week. Jagmeet Singh wrote on Twitter on the 4th of July, "While the price of goods grow at alarming rates, wages have only increased by 3.9%. The Liberal government has failed to support everyday Canadians with immediate action, yet it continues to help billionaires get even richer as they avoid paying their taxes. It's shameful." Did you catch that? Jagmeet Singh criticizing the Liberal government, calling the Liberal government shameful?
It's all my fault!
I mean, yeah, you don't need me to explain how ridiculous that is. It's Jagmeet Singh who's propping up the Liberal government. It's him who is basically in control. He could drop his support of the Liberal government today, force the Liberal government into an election, and as he says, help control the price of goods. Stop letting billionaires get richer while all of us get poorer. He could do it all today. He could do it all right now. But of course he doesn't want to do that. He doesn't have the ability to do that. And he knows that if he does do that, he'll never win again. So what he's doing here really is trying to convince every Canadian that he's doing his part for the worker. He's doing his part to stand up against the Liberal government and to stand up for working class Canadians. But in reality, he's more of a loser than a leader, the furthest thing from a political leader for the people. He's too afraid to lose his power, too afraid to lose his seat. And he's going to do that by quietly propping up the Liberal government and hoping we're all too stupid to notice. Well, Jagmeet, you got 3,000 comments to 768 likes. 3,000 comments to 768 likes. That is worthy of the award every single week. Let's just go through some of these great responses. This one just hits the nail on the head. This guy thinks we don't know. Here's another great comment. Just wish there was something you can do. Can't put my finger on it. Oh, I know, it's called the non-confidence vote. You can single-handedly bring them down, but you won't because you need February 2025 for your golden pension. And you talk about others' greed. And to wrap it up, we have a great comment here. Reading tweets about you bashing the Liberals while you formed a coalition with them and work alongside them every day is the most bizarre moment in politics yet. This will go down in Canadian history as just a very bizarre time. That's a perfect way to put it. It's very bizarre. What does it mean if the leader of the NDP admits that he is propping up a shameful government, as he calls it? He is the one propping up this so-called shameful government. What does that mean for the NDP? Well, we will let you decide what that means for the NDP, but for Jagmeet Singh, he is this week's winner of the Ratio of the Week award. All right, that's going to do it for us this week. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Harrison Faulkner, and this is Ratioed.